When it comes to people who are toxic, you have to train yourself to stop listening to their words and start watching their patterns, because patterns don't lie and people always reveal themselves through repetition, no matter how much they try to cover it up with charm. Or that is their character showing itself in its purest form. And the biggest mistake you can make is pretending you didn't see it, because you wanted to believe their excuses more than you wanted to face reality. But the reality is clear. When someone repeatedly crosses the same line, they are telling you who they are. And the longer you deny it, the more you give them power over you. Because they learn that no matter how many times they betray your trust, you'll still let them back in. And they'll still have access to you. Think about it like this. If someone lies to you once, you may be able to understand it as a mistake. But when they lie to you the second, third, or 10th time, that is not a mistake. That is a pattern. And the pattern is the truth of who they are, not their words and not their excuses, because the truth always lives in actions, not apologies. You cannot afford to ignore this, because the cost is your peace, your trust, and eventually your self-worth. And when you look back at the times you were hurt by someone toxic, you'll notice it wasn't the first betrayal that broke you. It was the repeated ones, the ones you saw coming but still allowed because you wanted to believe they would change. And every time you gave them another chance, you taught them that their bad behavior comes with no consequences. That is the trap toxic people set for you. They'll test your boundaries, cross them, then apologize just enough to get back in. But they don't apologize to change. They apologize to reset the cycle, because they know if they keep repeating it long enough, you'll get used to it. You'll normalize it. And before you know it, you'll stop trusting yourself. You'll start doubting your own instincts. And that's how they win, because while you're second guessing your own perception, they're showing you exactly who they are through the same predictable behavior patterns. And the only reason they keep getting away with it is because you keep choosing to give them the benefit of the doubt, when what you should be doing is giving yourself the benefit of the truth. You need to understand that patterns are powerful signals. They are the evidence you need to stop questioning yourself. Because when someone shows you the same side of themselves repeatedly, that's not bad luck. That's not a misunderstanding. And it's not an accident. It's intentional. And it's who they are at their core. And when you ignore that you're not being kind or forgiving, you're being blind to the truth that's right in front of you. And the truth is not hard to see. It's hard to accept. Because accepting it means you have to take action. It means you have to let go. It means you have to stop giving them access to you. And that's where most people get stuck. Not because they don't see the pattern, but because they don't want to deal with what the truth demands of them. But I'll tell you this, if you want to protect yourself, if you want to stop living in cycles of betrayal, the smartest thing you can do is study the pattern and act on it. Not the apology, not the charm, not the hope of who you want them to be, but the pattern of who they keep proving themselves to be. Because a pattern is consistent, and consistency is what reveals character. And if someone consistently disrespects you, lies to you, uses you, or manipulates you, then that is their character. And you don't need to wait for them to change to decide what to do. Because the truth is they won't, not as long as you keep rewarding their behavior with another chance. When you start looking at people through the lens of their patterns, you take your power back. Because you stop arguing with yourself. You stop falling for empty words, and you stop living in a fantasy of who you wish they were. You start living in reality, and reality will free you every single time. It may hurt at first to admit that someone you cared about is not who you thought they were, but the pain of accepting the truth is always better than the pain of being trapped in a lie, because at least the truth sets you free. And once you are free, you can protect your peace, your energy, and your future from being wasted on someone who has already proven they don't deserve you. So don't ignore patterns, don't excuse them, don't rationalize them away, because every time you see the same toxic behavior repeated, it's the universe handing you the truth. The only question is, will you finally respect yourself enough to believe it, or will you keep choosing the comfort of denial, because the choice is always yours? But remember this, patterns don't lie. People do. The reason toxic people never truly change is because they don't see themselves as the problem. They see you as the problem for noticing, for calling it out, or for setting boundaries that limit their control. And this is why giving them second chances is not only pointless but dangerous. Because when someone has convinced themselves that their behavior is justified, that their manipulation is acceptable, and that their selfishness is normal, then every time you give them another opportunity, you're not creating change. You're reinforcing their belief that they can keep doing what they do without consequences. They don't walk away from your forgiveness thinking about how to be better. They walk away thinking about how easy it was to get you back under their grip. And the cycle continues. What makes this worse is that toxic people are often skilled at disguising themselves. They know how to apologize with just the right words. They know how to twist the situation so that you feel guilty for even being upset. They know how to make you question whether you're overreacting. And by the time you convince yourself to forgive them, they've already won. Because now they've proven to themselves that they can hurt you and still have access to you. They can lie to you and still sit at your table. They can betray you and still walk through your door. And what's even more damaging is that while you may think you're being compassionate, they're thinking you're being weak, and that weakness is what they feed on. You must understand that toxic people don't change, because change requires accountability, and accountability requires humility, and humility requires the ability to look in the mirror and admit that you've caused pain to someone else. But toxic people are allergic to accountability. They will twist, deny, and project before they ever admit they were wrong. So when you keep handing them second chances, you're not leading them to a breakthrough. You're simply giving them more room to refine their toxicity, to sharpen their tactics, and to perfect their control over you. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it becomes to see clearly, because slowly they drain you of your confidence, your energy, and even your ability to trust your own judgment. The truth is, someone who truly wants to change doesn't need 10 chances. They don't need endless forgiveness. And they don't need you to keep proving your love for them by tolerating their disrespect. Someone who truly wants to change will change after the first chance, because they'll see the pain they caused and they won't want to do it again. They'll own up to their mistakes, and they'll show through consistent action that they value you and they respect you. But toxic people are not interested in respect. They're interested in control, and control thrives on your willingness to overlook their behavior over and over again. So when you hand them yet another opportunity, you're not showing them love. You're handing them the keys to your peace and telling them to destroy it whenever they want. And think about it. How many times have you seen the cycle play out the same way? They hurt you, they apologize, they promise it won't happen again, you forgive, and then a few weeks or months later it happens again. It's like clockwork, it's predictable, and yet we convince ourselves that maybe this time will be different. Maybe this time they'll mean it. Maybe this time they'll wake up and finally realize the damage they're causing. But if you look at the history, if you look at the trail of broken promises and repeated betrayals, the evidence is right in front of you. They never meant to change. They only meant to buy themselves more time to keep doing what they've always done. Because as long as you give them access, they'll never have a reason to change. The hardest thing for people to accept is that change is not created by chances. It's created by consequences. And when someone never has to face the consequences of their actions, they have no motivation to change them. So if you really want to test whether someone deserves to be in your life, stop giving them another chance and start giving them consequences. Stop making excuses for them and start making boundaries for yourself. Because boundaries are not punishment. Boundaries are protection. And if someone can't respect your boundaries, that tells you everything you need to know about their true intentions, because someone who values you will never make you beg for respect. They will honor it without being asked. And I know it's not easy to let go. It's not easy to finally cut ties with someone you hoped would get better. But holding on to the idea of their potential is what's keeping you in pain, because potential without action is nothing but fantasy. And the longer you live in that fantasy, the longer you delay your own healing. And the longer you stay chained to someone who has already shown you they're not willing to grow. You can't fix someone who doesn't believe they're broken. You can't heal someone who enjoys hurting others. And you can't wait for someone to transform when they don't even think they need to change. So if you're stuck in the cycle of giving second chances, Ask yourself this: how many times do they have to prove to you who they are before you finally believe them? How many more times do you need to be hurt before you decide you've had enough? And how much of your life are you willing to sacrifice waiting for someone who has no intention of meeting you where you are? The truth is, the moment you stop giving them chances is the moment you reclaim your power. And the moment you reclaim your power is the moment you realize you never needed them to change. You only needed the courage to walk away. One of the hardest truths to accept about toxic people is that they are not interested in growth. They are interested in comfort. And comfort for them comes from keeping you exactly where you are, because the more chances you give them, the safer they feel in their dysfunction. They don't have to stretch. They don't have to confront themselves. They don't have to change their ways. They just have to wait for you to get over it. And that's exactly what they count on. They count on your kindness. They count on your empathy. They count on your hope. And they use all of those beautiful qualities against you until you no longer even recognize that you're being drained. Because in their mind, every time you give them another opportunity, you're telling them they don't need to do better. They just need to hold on until you forgive them again. This is why toxic people love cycles. They thrive on repetition because repetition creates patterns and patterns create predictability. And when they know you're predictable, when they know you'll always forgive, always come back, always take their side against yourself, then they know exactly how to keep you under control. They don't worry about improving. They don't worry about losing you, because they know that all they need to do is throw out a half-hearted apology, maybe shed a few tears, maybe promise the world, and then sit back while you convince yourself that this time it might be different. And by the time you realize it isn't, they've already positioned themselves as the center of your emotional world. And that position is power. Growth requires discomfort, and discomfort requires honesty, and honesty requires the ability to see yourself clearly. But toxic people can't handle that. They would rather manipulate reality than face it. They would rather blame you than admit their flaws. They would rather minimize the damage than acknowledge it, because acknowledging it would mean they have to change it. And changing it would mean losing the power they hold over you, and that's the last thing they want. So when you keep giving them second chances, you're not encouraging growth, you're enabling stagnation. You're allowing them to stay in the comfort of their dysfunction. And the longer you do that, the deeper you sink into the trap. You may think your patience will inspire them to grow, but it doesn't. It only teaches them to delay their manipulation until the storm passes. You may think your love will heal them, but it doesn't. It only makes them more entitled to keep taking without giving. You may think your loyalty will eventually prove your worth to them, but it doesn't. It only convinces them that no matter how poorly they treat you, you'll never leave. And the truth is, someone who refuses to grow will never appreciate your sacrifices, because they don't see them as sacrifices. They see them as obligations, as what they're owed. And the moment you stop giving, they'll reveal their true colors, because it was never about growth. It was always about control. It's important to understand that growth is a personal decision. No one can force it. No one can beg someone into it. No one can love someone enough to make them do it. It comes from within. And if a person has no desire to evolve, then all the chances in the world won't make a difference. They will stay exactly as they are, repeating the same mistakes, causing the same pain, making the same promises, and expecting the same forgiveness. Because why would they change when life is so easy for them with you carrying the weight? When life is so comfortable for them with you doing the emotional labor? When life is so simple for them because you keep removing the consequences they should be facing? The tragedy is that while they stay stagnant, you're the one who changes, but not in the way you deserve. You become smaller, quieter, less certain of yourself. You begin to doubt your worth. You begin to normalize disrespect. You begin to confuse suffering with strength. And all of that happens because you believed that if you just held on a little longer, they would finally grow into the person you wanted them to be. But all they did was grow more confident in their ability to break you down. Because toxic people don't grow in the light of your love. They grow in the shadow of your silence. They grow when you let them repeat the same behaviors without consequence. And that's why they will never change as long as you keep handing them endless chances. You have to remember that real growth is visible. It shows up in consistent action. It shows up in changed behavior. It shows up in humility and accountability. It doesn't hide behind words or empty promises. It doesn't repeat the same cycle 100 times. And it doesn't need a lifetime of forgiveness to finally appear. If someone truly wants to grow, you will see it immediately in how they treat you after the first mistake. You won't have to beg for it. You won't have to chase it. And you won't have to suffer endlessly to earn it. But if someone shows you that they prefer their comfort over growth, then the most loving thing you can do is step back. Because staying in their cycle won't push them forward. It will only pull you down. So when you find yourself tempted to give yet another chance, remind yourself that growth is not something you can give to someone else. It's something they must choose for themselves. And if they haven't chosen it by now, they probably never will. Because the truth is, toxic people don't hate chances, they love them, they depend on them, they thrive on them. But what they hate is accountability. What they hate is consequences. What they hate is boundaries. And until you stop giving chances and start enforcing boundaries, they will never feel the discomfort that forces growth. They will never be pushed out of the cycle, and you will never be free from it. When you keep giving toxic people second chances, what you are really doing is teaching them that your forgiveness is limitless. And when forgiveness has no limits, it loses its meaning because instead of being a path to redemption, it becomes a shield for their bad behavior. It becomes the cushion that softens every blow, the safety net that catches them every time they fall from their own destructive choices. And rather than learning from their mistakes, they learn that mistakes have no consequences as long as you are in the picture. They learn that they can do what they want, say what they want, disrespect you when it suits them, and all they have to do is wait long enough for you to come around and make it okay again. And in that dynamic, you may think you're giving them grace, but what you're actually giving them is power. And once they recognize that power, they will keep using it. Second chances should be sacred. They should be a rare gift that comes with responsibility, not a recurring option that someone can redeem whenever they feel like it. But toxic people see second chances as invitations to continue the same cycle because they know you'll bend, and if you bend, they never have to break. They never have to face the weight of their actions. They never have to grow up. They just have to wait for you to carry the weight for them. And that's the dangerous truth that many people don't want to admit. You cannot love someone into becoming better. You cannot forgive someone into accountability. And you cannot give enough chances to someone who refuses to change, because the moment they realize you're willing to tolerate their behavior, they will stop even pretending to do better. They will stop making the effort, and they will simply rely on your pattern of forgiveness to secure their place in your life. Every time you allow yourself to be hurt, and then return as though nothing happened, you teach them that pain is part of the deal. You teach them that apologies, no matter how shallow, are enough to wipe the slate clean. You teach them that your boundaries are flexible, and boundaries that bend too often might as well not exist, because boundaries only protect you when they are respected. And toxic people have no respect for what protects you. They only care about what serves them, so when you bend, when you excuse, when you say, "It's fine," even when it's not, you are building a contract without words that tells them they can keep doing what they're doing. And the moment that contract is signed, your pain becomes routine to them. Your disappointment becomes background noise. Your tears become predictable. Toxic people don't learn from your forgiveness. They learn from your boundaries. They learn from consequences. And they learn from absence, because as long as you are present, as long as you are available, as long as you are willing to repair what they keep breaking, they have no motivation to change. Why would they, when life is so easy for them with you cleaning up the mess? Why would they when forgiveness arrives before accountability? Why would they when every second chance reassures them that they don't need to worry about losing you? They just need to worry about manipulating you enough to stay. And that's exactly what they become skilled at: manipulation. Not growth, performance, not accountability. When you strip away the illusion, what's left is this: every second chance you give without change is really another chance for them to hurt you. Every return you make to a toxic cycle is another opportunity for them to reinforce the same behavior. And every time you hope they will be different while ignoring their consistency, you set yourself up to be disappointed again. And the saddest part is, while you're waiting for them to change, They're waiting for you to forget. While you're clinging to hope, they're clinging to habit. While you're making excuses for them, they're making plans for the next time they can push the limit and still get away with it. Because they don't see your forgiveness as grace. They see it as weakness. They see it as compliance. They see it as permission, and if you're honest with yourself, you know this is true. Because if forgiveness alone could change a person, toxic people would be the healthiest, most loving individuals on earth. They've had more forgiveness than anyone else. They've been given more chances than they ever deserved. They've had more patience than most people would tolerate. And yet here they are, still lying, still manipulating, still disrespecting, still repeating the same patterns, because forgiveness is not transformation. Forgiveness is not growth. Forgiveness is not accountability. Forgiveness is only an open door, and if the person who walks through that door has no intention of changing, then all you've done is invite the same behavior back into your life. This is why the cycle with toxic people feels endless, because it is, as long as you keep participating, as long as you keep reopening the door, as long as you keep handing out second, third, fourth chances. They will never take you seriously. They will never look in the mirror. They will never believe that they have to change. Because why should they when you keep doing the heavy lifting for them? And that's why the most powerful thing you can do is not forgive endlessly, but enforce boundaries consistently. Not hope endlessly, but see reality clearly. Not give chances endlessly, but understand that some people will never change unless life forces them to, and life cannot force them to change if you keep stepping in and rescuing them. Life cannot hold them accountable if you keep taking the consequences away. Life cannot teach them lessons if you keep shielding them from the pain of their own actions. And that's the truth you have to embrace. If they are going to change, it won't be because you gave them another chance. It will be because they finally faced the weight of life without your endless safety net. And until you let go, they will stay the same. Because in their world, why would they ever change what already works in their favor? Toxic people thrive on patterns and repetition. They thrive on knowing that your forgiveness has no expiration date, and they rely on that cycle to keep their power alive, because every time they hurt you and then manage to slip back into your life, it reinforces their belief that they can do anything without real consequence. And this is why so many people find themselves stuck in a revolving door of pain, because they confuse the act of forgiveness with the hope of transformation. But hope without evidence is just denial, and denial is what keeps you trapped in relationships that should have ended long ago. Denial is what makes you excuse their cruelty by saying, "They didn't mean it," or "They'll be better next time," even though the next time always looks the same as the last. And this is the harsh reality. When someone shows you who they are repeatedly, it's no longer a mistake, it's a pattern. When you give a toxic person another chance, they don't see it as an opportunity to do better. They see it as a confirmation that their behavior is acceptable. They don't sit there reflecting on how much pain they've caused you. They sit there calculating how far they can push you the next time. Because every time you forgive them without requiring accountability, you lower the bar, and the lower the bar gets, the easier it becomes for them to step over it with no effort at all. And in that process, they lose respect for you. Because people do not respect what they can exploit, they do not value what they can manipulate, they do not cherish what they can use without limits. And that is what happens when you allow second chances to become an endless cycle. You lose not only their respect, but your own self. Respect too. Respecting yourself means honoring your boundaries. It means refusing to play the same game over and over with someone who already proved they cannot be trusted. Because toxic people are not blind to what they're doing. They are not ignorant of the pain they cause. In fact, many of them feed on it. They use your reactions as proof of their control. They see your tears, your frustration, your forgiveness as proof that you are still attached, still invested, still willing to stay even when you know you shouldn't. And that attachment becomes their leverage. It becomes the rope they pull on whenever they feel you slipping away. And with one apology, one sweet line, one moment of pretending to care, they pull you right back into the same destructive cycle. But here's the truth. Cycles don't break on their own. They break when you refuse to participate. They break when you stop excusing, when you stop hoping, when you stop waiting for someone to change who has no intention of doing so. And this is where many people struggle, because letting go feels final. It feels harsh. It feels like you're giving up on someone you once believed in, but you are not giving up on them. You are giving up on the illusion that they will ever become someone different. You are giving up on the fantasy that love, patience, and second chances can turn a toxic person into a healthy one, and that is not weakness. That is wisdom. Think about how many times you've been in the same argument, had the same apology, lived through the same disappointment, and asked yourself why it keeps happening. And the answer is simple. It keeps happening because you keep allowing it. Toxic people will never walk away from a situation that benefits them. They will never leave behind a person who continues to forgive them. Because why would they abandon a source of power, control, or comfort? They won't. It will always have to be you who decides the cycle ends. And that is the hardest yet most freeing choice you will ever make. The truth is, every second chance you hand out is borrowed time for them to rehearse the same play again. And while you may convince yourself that this time will be different, their actions rarely change. Their apologies rarely translate into consistent effort. Because they never had to earn back your trust. They never had to prove anything. They simply had to wait for your heart to override your mind. And once you gave in, they knew they didn't have to change a thing. And so the pattern repeats, slowly draining your energy, your confidence, and your hope. And here's something else most people don't want to admit. Deep down, you already know they won't change. You know it because you've seen the same script too many times. You know it because their actions scream louder than their words. You know it because every part of you feels the weight of disappointment each time you give them another chance. But knowing and acting on that knowledge are two different things. And this is where you must confront yourself. Are you more afraid of being alone than you are of being hurt again? Are you more loyal to the idea of who they could be than the reality of who they are? Are you so committed to the story you wrote in your head that you're willing to live through the nightmare it has become? The cycle of second chances doesn't just protect toxic people. It destroys you in the process. It chips away at your boundaries. It makes you doubt your worth. It convinces you that maybe you're expecting too much. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe you just need to be more patient. But the truth is, the problem is not your standards. The problem is their refusal to rise to them. The problem is not that you're too demanding. The problem is that they refuse to give the bare minimum of respect, consistency, and accountability. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. And once you see it, the responsibility falls on you. Because toxic people will not change simply because you want them to. They will not transform because you gave them one more chance. They will only change when they are forced to face a life without access to you, without the benefits you provide, without the endless forgiveness you hand out. And until that day comes, every second chance you give is another opportunity for them to remain exactly the same. Because comfort never breeds change, consequence does. And the greatest consequence you can deliver is removing yourself from their cycle altogether. Because only then will you break free from the grip of repetition and reclaim the peace that toxic people were never going to give you. The most dangerous illusion when dealing with toxic people is the belief that your love, patience, or persistence will eventually inspire them to change, because that belief keeps you locked in a cycle of hope and disappointment, waiting for a transformation that will never come. And the more you invest in this illusion, the harder it becomes to face the reality that some people are simply committed to who they are, not to who you hope they could be. And that is one of the hardest truths to accept, because it means letting go of the fantasy that your presence in their life is enough to turn them into someone better. But if you look closely at their behavior, at their choices, at their lack of accountability, you'll see that their actions already gave you the answer. They are not interested in growth. They are interested in comfort. And as long as they can remain the same and still have access to you, they will never change. Think about how many times you've been told words that sounded promising, how many times they said they'd do better, how many times they promised things would be different. Yet when it came time to prove those words with consistent action, nothing shifted, because talk is cheap. Apologies cost nothing, and promises are easy to make when they know you're desperate to believe them. But genuine change requires sacrifice. It requires self-awareness. It requires hard work. And toxic people rarely put in that work because they don't feel they need to. Why would they spend energy growing when they've already trained you to accept their bare minimum? Why would they give up behaviors that serve their ego when those behaviors still get them what they want from you? When you hold on to the hope that they'll change, what you're really holding on to is a story you've written in your head about their potential. You're clinging to the version of them you imagined instead of the version that shows up every day. And that disconnect between fantasy and reality is what causes so much pain, because you're in love with what could be while ignoring what is. You're investing in a future that will never arrive while sacrificing your present peace. And in that process, you're not only giving them more chances, you're also giving up pieces of yourself, your confidence, your clarity, your boundaries. And over time, you stop recognizing who you even are, because you've become so focused on saving someone else that you've forgotten how to protect yourself. The truth is, no one changes for someone else. People only change when they are ready, when they are willing, when they finally see their own patterns as destructive enough to want something different. And until that moment arrives, nothing you do will matter. No amount of love will heal them. No amount of patience will transform them. No number of second chances will wake them up. And this is why holding on in the name of love becomes a trap. Because it convinces you that staying loyal is noble, when in reality it's just a slow form of self-destruction. Because loyalty to someone who refuses to change isn't strength, it's surrender, and it's surrendering your happiness, your future, and your well-being for the sake of someone else's refusal to grow. You have to understand that toxic people are often very skilled at sensing your breaking point. They know exactly how much to give to keep you hanging on. They know when to turn on the charm, when to apologize, when to show just enough effort to reignite your hope. But that effort always fades. It always collapses back into the same behavior, because it was never real change, it was manipulation, a tactic designed to reset the cycle so they can continue being who they are without losing you. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the harder it becomes to walk away, because hope becomes your prison. And every time you forgive them, you're building stronger walls around yourself. Walls made of illusions, of what-ifs, of maybes, but never of reality. Facing reality is painful. It means admitting that they won't change. It means admitting that the relationship you wanted is never going to exist. It means admitting that your love alone is not enough to transform someone else. And those admissions cut deep, but they also set you free, because once you accept that toxic people won't change simply because you want them to, you stop wasting years of your life waiting for a breakthrough that will never come. You stop pouring energy into a void that never gives back. You stop sacrificing your peace on the altar of someone else's dysfunction. And you finally begin to reclaim your strength, your clarity, your dignity. And here's the part that most people don't see until it's too late. Every day you spend waiting for someone toxic to change is a day you could have spent building a life filled with people who actually value you. Every time you give them another chance is another delay in meeting someone capable of genuine love and respect. Every moment you waste in that cycle is a moment stolen from the future you deserve. Because toxic people don't just drain your energy. They steal your time. They keep you stuck in yesterday while convincing you that tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow always looks just like today, until you decide that today is the last day you'll play that game. So the choice is not about them. It never was. The choice is about you, about whether you're willing to stop lying to yourself, stop living in the illusion, and finally accept the truth. And the truth is simple. They won't change because of your love. They won't change because of your patience. They won't change because you gave them another chance. They will only change if and when they decide to. And until that day comes, every second chance you give is another chance for them to stay exactly the same. And once you see that clearly, the only path left is to let go. Because letting go isn't cruelty. It isn't betrayal. It isn't weakness. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. It's the moment you stop waiting for them to become someone they'll never be and finally decide to become the strongest version of yourself instead. One of the most painful lessons you will ever learn about toxic people is that they are not motivated by the same things you are. You might think love, loyalty, compassion, and patience will inspire them to rise higher, but toxic people are motivated by control, by comfort, by the ability to keep getting away with the same behavior without consequence. And when you keep giving them second chances, you're teaching them that your boundaries are negotiable, that your forgiveness is guaranteed, that no matter how many times they hurt you, you'll always be there waiting for them. And that message does not make them respect you more. It makes them respect you less, because they begin to see your love not as a gift, but as a weakness to exploit. When you allow a toxic person back into your life after they've shown you who they are, you're reinforcing their belief that they can mistreat you and still have access to you. You're rewarding the very behavior that hurt you in the first place. And that's why the cycle never breaks. Because what you permit, you promote, and what you allow, you continue. And once they know that you'll tolerate it, there's no incentive for them to change. Why would they grow when you've proven that they don't need to? Why would they evolve when the old version of them still gets everything they want from you? So every second chance becomes a green light for more disrespect, more lies, more betrayal, and more pain. The harsh truth is that toxic people often test you. They push limits to see how far they can go. They break your trust just to measure how quickly you'll rebuild it for them. They violate your boundaries just to see if you'll lower them instead of enforcing them. And every time you take them back, you confirm that their strategy works. You confirm that you're willing to abandon yourself for the sake of keeping them. And that confirmation only fuels their behavior further. It doesn't heal them. It empowers them, because now they know that no matter what damage they cause, you'll shoulder the burden of repair. And that is exactly how they keep control. Understand this clearly. Respect is not earned through words. It's earned through consistency. But toxic people rely on your hope. They feed off your desire to believe in the best version of them. They use apologies and promises as tools to reset your emotions. But once the dust settles, the same patterns always return, because they were never committed to change. They were committed to keeping you around. And once you see the game for what it is, you realize that the only way to truly change a cycle is to stop playing altogether, because staying in the cycle only reinforces their power. But stepping out of it is the only thing that takes that power back. Every second chance you give doesn't just give them another opportunity to hurt you. It also erodes your own self-respect, because deep down, you know they don't deserve that access anymore. Deep down, you feel the betrayal not only from them but from yourself. Because every time you take them back, you're betraying your own standards, you're silencing your own intuition, you're ignoring the lessons that reality is trying to teach you. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to trust yourself, because your mind and your heart get used to the cycle of pain, and you begin to normalize what should have never been acceptable in the first place. And here's the truth many people don't want to face. Toxic people rarely respect second chances, because respect is built on accountability, and accountability requires consequences. If someone can violate your trust and still return without consequence, where is the accountability? Where is the lesson? Where is the incentive for them to behave differently? There is none, which is why they keep doing it. Because in their mind, you're not someone to be valued. You're someone to be managed, to be manipulated, to be controlled. And as long as they can maintain that hold, they will never see the need to change. This is why protecting yourself is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the recognition that someone who repeatedly shows you they don't value your heart will never suddenly wake up one morning and decide to treat it with care, just because you gave them another shot. Because change doesn't happen in their comfort zone, it happens in discomfort. It happens when they finally face the reality that they've lost access to you, that their behavior cost them something they cannot get back. And if they don't experience that loss, if they don't feel that consequence, they will continue living as if their actions carry no weight, and you will continue suffering as if their choices are your responsibility to fix. The cycle of second chances becomes a prison, not because they keep you there, but because you keep unlocking the door for them. You keep opening the gate, you keep extending the rope, even after they've used it to tie you down before. And breaking free requires you to accept a truth you might not want to hear. That loving someone does not mean you have to keep forgiving them. That compassion for someone else cannot come at the cost of abandoning yourself. And that the deepest form of strength is not in how many times you endure their behavior, but in how firmly you refuse to tolerate it again. At some point, you have to stop asking whether they will change and start asking why you keep hoping they will. At some point, you have to stop questioning why they hurt you and start questioning why you keep handing them the weapon, because the answer lies not in their actions, but in your boundaries. And once you realize that, You see the only real way forward, and that way is to stop giving them more chances to stay the same, because the longer you do, the more you confirm their power over you. And the moment you stop, the moment you finally say enough, is the moment you begin to reclaim everything you lost. When you finally decide to stop giving toxic people second chances, something powerful happens within you, because up until that point, you have been living in a cycle where your energy was constantly drained, your emotions were constantly manipulated, and your peace was constantly disturbed. And every time you gave them another chance, you gave away a piece of your power, a piece of your time, and a piece of your dignity. But when you say no more, when you shut the door and mean it, you send a signal not just to them but to yourself that you will no longer be controlled, no longer be used, and no longer be held hostage by the same patterns that have kept you stuck. This shift is not about them, it's about you, because the moment you stop tolerating their behavior, you begin to see how much space you have been wasting on someone who never deserved it. You start to feel the weight of their chaos lifting off your shoulders. You begin to realize that the second chances you were handing out were costing you opportunities for growth, for joy, and for real connection. And that realization is both painful and liberating. Painful because you see how much you tolerated, but liberating because you finally understand that you don't have to tolerate it anymore, that you can rewrite the rules of how you allow people to treat you, and that choice belongs to you alone. The truth is, toxic people thrive on second chances because it allows them to stay in control. But once you refuse, once you draw the line and enforce it, their control begins to crumble, and when their control over you weakens, you may notice them panic, you may see them try harder to pull you back in. Maybe through guilt, maybe through fake promises, or even through anger, because they know that their access to you is slipping. But that reaction is not proof that they love you. It's proof that they are losing the grip they once had, and the more you stay firm, the faster their influence fades, and the clearer your mind becomes. And here's the part most people don't expect. The moment you stop giving toxic people second chances, you begin to hear your own voice again. Because their noise no longer drowns it out, your instincts become sharper, your self-respect grows stronger, and you no longer question whether you are the problem. You start to see that the problem was never that you weren't forgiving enough or loving enough. The problem was that they were never willing to change. And once you accept that, you stop wasting your time trying to convince yourself that maybe one more chance will make a difference, because you now know it won't, and that knowledge becomes your freedom. Walking away from second chances does not make you heartless. It makes you wise. It means you've learned that love without respect is not love, that forgiveness without accountability is not healing, and that patience without boundaries is self-destruction. And once you embody that truth, you no longer see walking away as weakness. You see it as strength. You see it as protecting your peace, your dignity, and your future. And while others might not understand your decision, you understand it clearly, because you lived the pain, you endured the cycle, and now you refuse to step back into it. Every time you close the door to a toxic person who wants another chance, you open the door to something greater. You open the door to relationships built on trust, to friendships built on respect, to opportunities that feed your growth instead of draining it. And most importantly, you open the door to a deeper relationship with yourself, because you begin to prove to yourself that you will no longer betray your own boundaries. And that proof is life-changing, because once you show yourself that you will not abandon yourself, you will never allow anyone else to abandon you either. It is also important to understand that breaking this cycle requires courage, because toxic people rarely leave quietly. They will test you, they will push harder, they will try every tactic to regain control. But each time you stand your ground, you grow stronger, you build resilience, and you start to recognize patterns faster. So instead of questioning whether you should give them another chance, you immediately see through their behavior and remind yourself that you've already given enough. And that mindset becomes unshakable over time. It becomes the armor that protects you from ever falling back into the same trap again. And here is the real transformation. When you stop giving toxic people second chances, you no longer attract them the way you used to, because your energy shifts, your standards rise, and the type of people you allow in your life changes. Toxic people can sense when someone will tolerate their behavior. They can also sense when someone will not. And when you step into this level of strength, You naturally repel those who seek to manipulate you, and you naturally draw in those who value and respect you, because like attracts like. And when you hold yourself to a higher standard, you invite people who rise to meet it. So understand this: stopping the cycle of second chances is not just about protecting yourself from someone else's toxicity. It's about reclaiming your life. It's about proving to yourself that your peace matters, that your dignity matters, that your future matters, and that no one who continually disrespects you deserves the privilege of staying in your life. Because giving someone another chance does not always make you compassionate. Sometimes it makes you complicit in your own suffering. And once you see that, once you fully accept it, you will never again waste your time giving second chances to someone who has already shown you who they are.